He had no one to offer him a shoulder when he wants to cry, when he wants to truly share his pain. After his younger sister died by the hands of his enemy, he realized the importance of a shoulder, of an embrace, of someone crying with him. Why don't I feel satisfied? Why don't I feel anything, no matter what I do? He shouted in his sprawling mansion. His voice echoed in the whole house. He was covered in blood, the blood of his enemies, after he mercilessly took revenge from them. He came back and kept drinking. He asked himself again, why don't I still feel satisfied? He said in a low voice as he looked at his wrist. He thought for a while before saying, if I cause myself pain, will I forget about her for some time? Already completely drunk, he drank another glass of alcohol. While drinking, he looked at his right, the door which held someone inside, the only one he thought of going to, the only one. There was no more feelings left in his heart. He opened the door of the room with an empty heart and heartbeat completely disturbed. He slowly opened the door, looking downwards. The girl, held captive, was sitting on the floor while hugging her knees. She looked above. She saw the rarest thing, the man in front of her crying, his eyes red, his face completely down, his gait drunk. Other times, when he would enter the room, he would be excited, happy, or smiling. Never did she ever see him in such a condition, nor did she even think that someone could hurt him too. Wasn't he the most dangerous and emotionless person? How can he cry? She thought. Shadows played on the walls as Vine observed the man who held her captive. Yet on this particular night, the air seemed charged with an inexplicable sorrow. He closed the door and sat on the ground, leaning against the bed a few inches away from her. Jungkook, how are you? Did you eat? He asked in a low voice. She could feel his voice shaking and eyes radiating emotions. She replied, I did, thanks to your servants. She didn't look at him for long. She looked ahead and said that. She is already habitual of this, how he comes to meet her after his office work, most times covered in blood. But it's been a week now. She stopped paying attention to those details. She stopped asking him to let her go. She tried enough times already. She tired herself enough already. She wanted to ask him about what happened. Who in the world made him suffer this much? As it seemed impossible for her. That's why she wanted to ask. But why would she? And thinking that why would someone like him reply her, she didn't ask. He inhaled. He started drinking the alcohol from the bottle that was in his hand. Did you ever lose someone close to you? Her eyes flickered at his question. She scoffed and looked downwards. Towards her legs, he looked at her. He smiled while looking at her and then said, you must be feeling quite happy, right? Seeing me like that, in such pain. You must be feeling that I got what I deserved. He nodded. I deserved it anyway. So laugh. Laugh all you want and do it loudly. You don't have to control it. She looked at him with tension etched across her forehead. She said, you think that everyone is like you? You think that you own the world, and if you slip up a little, everyone will come running to kill you and laugh on you? She asked, looking at him. he shouted. Isn't that how the world is? He lowered his voice and continued. Isn't that how the world treated me all these years? Till I decided to be like them. When I was a kid, my dad used to drown me when I would make a single mistake, knowing very well that I had a fear of water. My mom never intervened or stopped him until he turned me into a complete monster. Every enemy of his had the desire to kill me. I killed them to save myself, to only survive. I myself didn't realize when I'd become this popular, when the only thing I did was to protect myself and and my sister. Protecting oneself is that bad? He paused. He put a hand on his eyes as he cried his heart out. She looked at him, and when the realization hit her, she stopped looking at him with those eyes anymore. With those hateful eyes, her heart softened up. It melted when she saw him cry like that. She wanted to comfort him, but didn't know if it was the right thing to do or not. All she knew that if someone had comforted him back then, he wouldn't have turned to be like this. Someone has to comfort him to make that monster inside of him to vanish, as he himself doesn't want it. All he ever wanted was a shoulder to cry on and babble all his worries out. Jungkook, I miss her laugh, her silly jokes, her innocence. Why did they have to kill her so brutally? What did she even do to them? He cried loudly, his voice broken, his eyes shared misery. She couldn't see this anymore. If she doesn't do it now, more people like her will become his victims. But that's not the reason. She just wanted to comfort him. She took a few steps towards him, sat close to him. His hand was on his eyes so he couldn't see it. She put a hand on his thigh, softly yet firmly. He paused and looked at it, then at her. Her eyes filled with a bright shine that he failed to notice till now. He looked in those eyes and kept looking when she said, not everyone will laugh on you. She spoke in a soft melody. I'm really sorry that people did this to you, but not everyone is like that. He smiled and looked away. I've heard that often, but it's not the truth. Never encountered one person who wouldn't laugh on me, or better yet, try to kill me as soon as I make a mistake. Fine, I wouldn't laugh at you, she said, her voice a soothing balm. He looked at her, all stunned. He didn't know what to make out of it. He asked with a low and crying voice, why would you say that? Especially you. Don't you hate me? Or you do, but you have ulterior motives, like using me later. Fine. You are still thinking about me using you? Yes, I do hate you. I hate you because you think the whole world is the same. I just wanted to comfort you so that the monster inside you would calm down instead of turning into a hunter that no one can stop. Fine. I do hate you more than anything. But I am a human with a weak heart. I can't see someone in such pain. If they did something like this to me. Her eyes were red when she spoke all of that. He looked at her and first time found someone whom he considered a human. He kept looking at her as he didn't believe it. He relaxed his muscles and said to her after looking at her for a long time, can I rest my head on your shoulder? His broken and miserable voice almost made her cry. She stopped her tears and without looking at him, she pulled his head to rest on her. She didn't want to show him that she was crying too, as she remembered herself, that how much she felt helpless when he forcefully caged her in his mansion. She was physically caged there, but him, he has been mentally caged ever since he was a child. She wanted to rescue him. Even after knowing what he did to her, she wanted to rescue him with small gestures, even if it meant giving him a shoulder to rest his head. He put his head there and cried loudly. The whole night she stayed with him, without moving, without getting tired. She stayed still as he kept crying. Her heart broke down a million times in between. Her eyes fell tears a lot of times in between, as she couldn't hear his miserable screams anymore. She still stayed with him. The night was long, dark, and heavy. They slept in their positions, with him in her embrace. The kind of long and peaceful sleep that comes only after crying. He didn't force her the whole night, even when he could, to feel satisfied. But why would he, when all he ever wanted was this, a shoulder to cry all his worries out? He never wanted more than this. Was this too much to ask? As she was sleeping, she couldn't hear it, but Jungkook in his sleep babbled. Thank you for saving me. I'm sorry, Vine. I'm sorry.